with a little bit of show and tell. So I'm just going to go down the list. If you feel like sharing the project that you're working on, you can do that. I understand, schedules and stuff, maybe you haven't gotten as far as you wanted, but at least if you've been thinking about the thought process or any problems you've been researching or anything like that, I just want to kind of touch base with you guys and see where you're at. It's not getting graded on this, other than just class participation, just sharing. But I just kind of want to see where everyone's at. We're going to start right at the top with Allison. If you want to just briefly describe what you've been working on, and if you have anything to show, that'd be great. Basic movement, okay. 2D from the top view, okay. All right. I think I know it's a pain, but I think for this section, if you guys should just turn on your mics, and so I can just hear you rather than reading the chat, probably be better for me. So you can't pick up items yet. Okay. Well, hopefully with this tutorial that I do today, it might help you out, because we go over that. This lecture is mainly 2D stuff, a 2D project, so should help you. Okay, Bryant.
All right. Hey, Andy, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so in Unity, I've been working on a 3D project. I'm doing a stealth game. My progress so far is I'm working on levels. I'm crafting them in Unity just using basic objects.
Okay.
And so far, I got player movement down, and I'm trying to create a event for when you get to the end of a level to trigger another scene level load in right now.
Okay.
That's just where I'm at right now. I haven't implemented the ray casting with surveillance cameras yet, but that's what I'm working on.
Okay. I think we'll probably get into raycasting next week. I probably either get into that or UI. I mean, I kind of wanted people's input to see which one that they wanted the most, but we'll be going over both of them, obviously.
Okay. But yeah, I'm doing fine. I'm just using the third-person controller for testing through the level.
Okay.
See what works and what's interesting to feel, or what feels interesting to play.
Awesome. Great. Thank you so much.
No problem.
All right. Talia's here, right? I believe I saw her. Yes. Talia, you are up.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay. I don't so I don't have everything pulled up at the moment, but everything is going okay. I don't really have much as I wanted to have at the moment, but that's just because I've been busy with other things.
Sure. Mm-hmm. But
yeah, it's a 3D game, but I feel like I might be a bit too ambitious, so I might need to tone that down in terms of like the level and how everything's going so far at the moment, because I think it might be a bit too much.
Okay. What specifically are you worried about?
Well, I'm still trying to get the movement right and like picking up items, but I just feel like, I guess maybe in terms of the background, it might be a bit too much. Kinda.
Okay. Yeah, I can. You talk about set dressing, like adding item.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's usually a big time-consuming process. I would recommend just, I mean, if you can find some assets that you can credit and kind of put in as placeholders, that
Okay.
usually saves some time so that you don't have to worry about populating everything. You can kind of get the mechanics going.
Okay.
But there's a lot of I covered a lot of the movement and like picking up items for 3D stuff, and we'll actually a lot of the 2D stuff goes into the same kind of concepts. So yeah, we'll be talking about that later today.
Okay. Okay.
So great, thank you. Alrighty, didn't see Lloyd before. I still don't see him. Alrighty, Devin, you're up. Devin, are you around? Oh, okay. There you go. In the chat, everything's coming along. Got player movement. Trying to get projectiles working. Okay. Yeah, like I said, we'll probably have a class just on raycasting, and that goes into projectiles and shooting and all that stuff. So look forward to that. Okie doke. Jen, you are up. I know I did see Jennifer before. I guess she's not in here anymore. Okie doke. Brian, you're up. If you can, try to use the mic, just so that it makes it easier to talk with you guys. All right, Brian, maybe we'll get back to you. Robert?
Hello?
Hey, Robert.
Hey, what's going on? So I'm making a 2D game, and I have like the character movement and everything down, but I'm trying to like figure out how to like make my character make the character pick up and move objects. That's currently what I'm working on, and like level design.
Okay. Yeah, we'll be talking about picking up items today and moving objects. Like I said, it's fairly similar to the 3D stuff we've been doing. But yeah, we'll go over all of that. But great.
Awesome.
Sounds like you're off to a good start.
Yep.
Thank you. Moving down the list. Nathan?
Hello.
Hey, Nate. Sorry, I always get names messed up.
So I haven't had a whole lot of time to get anything physically together, but I've been thinking through a lot about how I'm going to get my movement done properly, because I'm trying to have sort of turn-based movement, kind of akin to like Pokemon Mystery Dungeon.
Okay.
So I'm trying to figure out how to get the enemies to move at the same time that you're moving, and how to have them not do anything while you're not doing anything.
Okay, great. Yeah, it sounds like a good place to start. I feel like the RPG mechanics is usually like the first thing to get down. And yeah, sounds good. Great. Thank you, Nate. Okay. Antoine? Is Antoine here? Yeah, I didn't see him at the beginning. Sean?
Hello.
Hey, Sean.
Hey, so essentially, since what I'm essentially making is kind of like baseball in a way, with the player needing to input an action at a certain time, that's pretty much what I've just been focusing on, just getting the timer down and getting the input at the right time down, which is kind of difficult, but since it's the main focus, that's what I've been working on mostly.
Okay, just refresh my memory. What is your game about?
Essentially, it's just a little mini game kind of thing where you have to do 3 timing-based events, which I might just change to 1 just to make it easier for myself. And the better your timing is, the better your score is.
I see. Okay. Is it kind of like a bar that's going back and forth and you have to hit it at the right time? Or
it's probably going to be something like that. It's pretty much just if you ever played Kirby Superstar, it's that one mini game, Megaton Punch. It's essentially just like that.
I am familiar. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I feel like those timing things can be a bit finicky, but it's just something you kind of have to go through. But awesome. Thank you, Sean. Appreciate it. Let's see here. Jose Martinez.
Is my mic working at all?
Yes.
All right. I don't have a proper mic, so it might be a little off, but essentially, as my design document said, I'm working on a sort of test-like 3D game. So most of the coding will be focused on background sort of calculations for damage, as well as movement, so that if a player doesn't necessarily know all the movements of a chess, it'll sort of light up the movement pieces where it can go and sort of lock the one object to that sort of direction. So much of the coding will be on movement, background calculations, and picking up pieces and moving them that way. The 3D pieces I've already worked on through another class that sort of could go into that, but essentially that's the sort of plan and game style.
Okay, great. So do you have any of the movement currently, or is that the next thing to work on?
That's the next thing. I already have all the 3D pieces to put into Unity, and then I just gotta put them in there and start coding the movements to them.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jose. Joshua? Oh, mic is broken. Don't have much except for movement. Okay. Michelle?
So I got movement down. I'm actually looking into how to make it have the floors have the dungeon like spawn the rooms randomly. So I'm looking into that currently.
You're spawning random like dungeons?
Like how in Binding of Isaac the rooms are completely randomized. That's what I'm trying to do with my game.
I see. Okay. Well, yeah, there's a lot out there on that. It can be probably daunting. So, I mean, I would first recommend like trying to get like items within like a set dungeon to randomize first, and kind of work your way up towards actual large areas to be randomly generated.
All right. Because I already found a tutorial on how to randomize items. So.
Oh, awesome. Great. Thank you, Michelle. Hellbor, you're up.
Can you hear me?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, just like everyone else, I got a movement down. The main thing I was focusing on is the because it's like a stealth game.
Mm-hmm.
Is the like detecting the player. My original game design document had like guards, but that's seemed a bit too difficult. So instead, I'm switching to spotlights.
Okay.
And probably it's attaching like a cone or a cylinder to them, and then doing collision detection.
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
way we can.
Yeah, that's a pretty common thing. So yeah, that sounds good. Great, thank you. Eric?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, but I think somebody else's mic is on. Okay, there it goes. Yeah, go ahead.
So I kind of have moved it down sort of a bit, but like I'm still working on everything else. You know how kind of simple my game is for like the idea of it right now.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm just kind of focusing on getting gravity kind of working properly, momentum working for the most part.
Okay, it's always a tricky thing. Yep. So okay, thank you.
Yep.
Jose Camareri, you can go ahead. We're just kind of giving a status report of what we've been working on. I mean, if you have anything to share, that's fine. If you don't have it set up, that's okay. We just wanted it to hear what you have going on right now. Okay. Is there anything in particular or any mechanic that you're having a problem with? I will. Okay, that's no problem. Yeah, if you want to let me know any issues you're having, just let me know. I'll be happy to help. Steven?
Yeah, so like everyone else, I've got my movement down. I've got gravity where I want it. My jumps are nice and smooth. This week, I'm just working on downloading some assets and tying like an animated character to that movement that I have. And in the long term, I kind of want to set up a script that spawns in platforms as opposed to building out the level. since I'm doing it's like a rhythm game called Beat Jumper. I think it'd be easier just to have certain patterns of platforms kind of spawn in over time. But that's what I'll be working on over the next couple weeks.
Okay. Have you implemented the audio at all?
No, I have not.
Okay. I was just curious. So. All right, great. Thank you, Steven. Caleb?
Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
All right. So I've been mostly working on just the main puzzle mechanics of the game. Recently, I got the timer working. Basically, just moving the one box off of a certain point, which started the timer, and then moved it to another point, which stopped it. So
great.
I'm gonna take that a few steps higher. Jumping's a little floaty still currently, but I haven't really gotten to movement just yet. It's just kind of basic, but that's what I've been working on.
Okay, awesome. Great, thank you, Caleb. Thornton, still not here. And see Nicholas either. Diego?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Hey, so right now, like most other people, I've been working on movement and things, like just moving around, jumping. I'm trying to figure out how to do like climbing. That's one of the things in my game. And also sort of like moving through walls, like walking through certain types of solids. And I've also been trying to figure out how to sort of switch controls between different characters, and also how to swap places, because that's like that's like the main mechanic in my game, is like swapping places. So that's what I've been trying to figure out most of all.
Yeah, for kind of like invisible walls or walls that you can go through, easiest way to do that is just check is trigger on your collision box for whatever object you want to go through, and your player should just go straight through it. And then to teleport from one place to the other, you just change the transform.position to whatever position that you want it to be. So first you set a variable like that is the position you want to go to, and then you set whatever game object's position to that new position. If that helps, that's like kind of like a 10-second explanation, but something to think about when you're working on that kind of stuff.
Sure.
So great, thank you, Diego.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Danielle. Yeah, Danielle wasn't feeling well, so she may have stepped away. We'll just go ahead. Rakeem? I saw Rakeem. Am I going crazy? All right. Donald?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
All right. So I don't have any of the scripts done, but can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
So this is just a basic tutorial of what I've been working on. you start off right here. See if I can zoom in. Basically, if you look at the game view, you can see what you're looking at. And basically, you travel around through. This is just the tutorial level until you get to the firehouse right here. And then basically it allows you to just maneuver the truck through a city, a turn, and then figure out how to work the lights and sirens.
Okay, great. Yeah, I like the progress. Very cool. Did you happen to check out the tutorial I sent you about like automated traffic?
No, I haven't yet, and that's I haven't added that yet. I mean, I've added some cars in here, like this one right here. It does have a 3D box collider around it, just because after I get the movement and the sounds in there, the next thing I want to work on is like the damage counter. So if you hit a car, like there's a bar or something that will show damage. And then the time for when you have to get to work on the time mechanism for when you have to start and get to an accident. The car mechanic is probably going to be the last thing that I'm going to work on, just because if it is like really difficult to get point A to point B, like I can understand that, just because I wanted it to try to simulate like real traffic. And in real traffic, when we're driving, we have no idea where the car is going to go. We tell them to get out of the way, but we don't know where they're going to go. So, okay.
I mean, another idea, if you have the sirens on, you can actually set it so that if an object is within, like, I guess, like the sound of, or the near the sound of your audio, they can like stop. Or like just stop their movement. So it's essentially waiting for the engine to go through. So that's something else to think about.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. That's good.
So okay, awesome. Thank you, Don.
Yep.
I think that was everybody. Let's see. Mohammed, we're just kind of going around talking about the progress on our games. Did you have anything you wanted to talk about? Okay, let's see your message. Yeah. That's typically called 2.5D because it's kind of in between. Yeah, it's the same as doing like a 3D game, just in a 2D space. So great. Bryant, did you have anything you wanted to say about the progress or anything? Going once, going twice. Okay. Well, I'm glad everyone at least seems like they have some idea of where they want to go. I'm glad everyone's getting movement down, and they have. Sounds like that you all have a good plan of what to work on and stuff. So I just real quick wanted to go over. We have like 3 actual like lectures left in the class, and then the presentations is on that 4th week, which is the 3rd of December. So in the syllabus, the last 2 lectures are pretty much class time, but I'll probably just keep doing what I'm doing, just having more tutorials if there's things that people are interested in knowing about, I'll probably throw that in there. That seems to work, and gets to be a chance to talk to you guys if you have any issues or questions, or, you know, again, I feel like it's a good idea. I don't want to feel like it's mandatory, because honestly, I feel like you guys know what you need to do, you know when it's due, and I personally don't think attendance is the biggest thing in the world, as long as you're getting things done. And if you have questions, obviously, you know, come to the lectures or email me or whatever. But if you feel comfortable just working on your own, and, you know, you'd rather do that than sit in a lecture, I should be okay with that. If you feel like that, just let me know, because they want me to do the attendance. I've been trying to be pretty good about it. But yeah, if that's something you're interested in, just let me know, so that, you know, I'm not putting you down as absent when you're just working on things. Shoot, I just broke my pen. So that being said, I'm just gonna go right into what I had set up. So I'm gonna talk about doing 2D games today. Oh my goodness, I really messed up my keyboard. Give me 1 second, guys. So 2D games are not very different from 3D. It's just kind of fixing the camera in one position and kind of just seeing things flat. So I'm going to go ahead and get Unity going here. Okay, as always, I lose my chat. There's my chat. Hopefully everyone can see my screen. For this lecture, there is coding to it, but a lot of the stuff in Unity is set up. It's 1 second here. I gotta change something. Sorry, give me 1 second. All right, and then do that again. Cool. Just gives me more space to work. It's a lot of setup, especially if you want to get things working correctly. So we're gonna first talk about Sprite Sheets, which if any of you have done 2D animation, which it seems like a lot of you are animators or artists, you know that Sprite Sheets are essentially the different cells of your animation in one sheet, right? So, oh, also, I did not make these art assets. I grabbed them off of the Unity Assets Store just for this tutorial. I do not own them in any way. I just was messing around with them. But you can see, like, oh, these are kind of a bad example. Let me look at the tile map. So down here at the bottom, that's kind of a tile sheet. You get to, you have all the different items on one sheet that you can just use in your game. So how do you make a sprite sheet, or a sprite for your game? Just like you would any other object, 2D object sprite. It's pretty simple. Acts pretty much just like another game object, except it has a sprite renderer that's attached to it.
Can I ask a question about this?
Sure.
So we're developing a 2D game right now. But do all of them have to use a tile like a tile map on a 2D game, or can you use something else? Because if you think about like the old original Pokemon, I mean, it was kind of like a 2D game where it was almost like face down. You didn't really get like a 3D sense of view.
Right. Yeah. So when we say tile map, it means it pretty much means all of the art assets that we are using for this game is on a tile or like on a sheet, right? So like all these individual pieces on this grid are part of a sprite sheet. This example here is pretty much is what you're describing, is a top-down view of a game, right? So you can do this, and you can also do like a platforming style where you actually have platforms and gravity. And so it's two different types of 2D games, and you can definitely do both. I don't know if you can do 2D games without a tile system like this. I can look into that, but I don't know how easy that would be. I guess you could if you use objects like this where you can just kind of mess around with it, but when it comes to the backgrounds and things, usually that's like on a grid. Sprites work with 3D objects. As far as I know, I believe they can. You can probably put a sprite in a 3D project, because essentially what this 2D project gets set up as, like I'll turn off the 2D, this is what it is in the actual game space, right? It isn't a 3D world. You're essentially using 2D planes. But yeah, this kind of gives you an idea of how Unity is dealing with 2D, which is really the 2D project is a template that just puts the camera in one space, and then you just have these different sprites within them. If that makes sense. So, pop 2D back on. So we have this new sprite. Nothing in there right now. Let me grab one of these guys just to show you how to set it up here. Multiple. Thing is, I threw all these folders in, so it's not necessarily organized, which is that's why I say organize your stuff. Yeah, I guess it's 0. I'm going to use that guy. Yeah, and then when you import it, chances are it's going to be very small. Try bigger size. Okay. But anyhow, you get the idea. Okay, and then for this sprite, let's give it a different name. I don't know. And then all right, so we have this guy here. Right now he's just kind of in place, not doing anything, right? So how do we get him to animate? Well, we have these all split up already. If we didn't, you can use the sprite editor. I believe if you have it, yeah, like this, where it's just a sprite sheet that has all of the different cells on one file. You can go to Window, right? 2D Sprite Editor. Okay, and then using this, you can slice up all of these individual squares so that you can use the sprites in here. So again, that's how pretty much these get all split up like that. So for this sprite object, we're going to create an animation. First, we're going to need the animation window here. And then to begin animating it, you have to create an animation clip. Got to name it. So we're going to do the guy idle. Okay. And again, a lot of you animators out there probably have seen something like this before, where you have your keyframes of all the different animations that you can set on this timeline. Oh, that's weird. I probably switched up the main sprite to be something else. So yeah, when you run it, you see the animation clip of him being idle. You can also spread this out so it doesn't look so sporadic. You can put multiple frames on there. You can move this around. You can also hit this recording to add different animation properties to this. So essentially, you can animate within this little keyframer as well. I personally wouldn't recommend doing that. It's helpful when you have multiple objects that you're animating for one game object. So if like the head is moving and the body is moving separately, like the head's bobbing and the body's bobbing, and you want to move the head like up and down or something like that, I can see that being useful. So again, that's how you create animation. And if you notice, it created this animation, this animation controller, I couldn't remember the name, and then the actual animation, which is the other guy, dot idle. So I'm going to go ahead and just dock this down there so I have it. Sorry, guys. Goodness. Hey, I'm sorry, everyone. Give me about 5 minutes. Hey, everyone. I'm back. Yeah, Murphy doesn't like when people knock on the door. So we hit play. And we have our animation. So we can check what's going on with our animations through our animation controller. If you double click on it, you have your animator screen here. And right now, we only have this one animation. This arrow is what connects the different states of your animation. So the default one is just the idle. If we had others, we would connect those. Oh, can't see anything. Maybe I should share my monitor. Wow. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay. All right. So let me go through that one more time. So if we run our game, we see that this character is in its idle state, just hanging out. This is the animation that we put on it. We can check all the animations that this player has. And again, this is just because I set this to the wrong initial sprite. I can't remember which one it is. This guy? Yeah, here we go.
Oh, the Vivaldi. We didn't do anything.
So yeah. So to check all the animations that are on this guy, you hit the animation controller here. You just double click it, and then this animator screen comes up. And right now we only have the one animation that we created. But if you had other ones, like for player movement, you would also have them in here as well. So we can take a look at the player one that I have set up here, which is this one here. So we have the player, I believe it's in a different folder. Yeah, so here's what I have for the player. So right now I have player idle and then a player walk animation, which is just another keyframed animation that I added to the animation. So in this window where we made the keyframes, this is where we put our idle. You can also add new clips into this animation keyframe so that you can save other states like walking or getting hit or something like that. So going back into our player. So in order to get the player walk to work, we have to create this this transition. How you do that is you right click it, make transition, and then you just connect it to what you want it to. The animation controller is created once you have a sprite, is that correct? Oh, you know, yeah. So if you have a game object that's empty, like we had with this guy before, if you go to your animation window, initially this will be blank. There won't be any keyframes or anything. It'll say to create an animation controller, hit create, and you hit create, and then it automatically creates the controller, and then you're in your first clip, and then that's when you throw in your animations on there. So, yeah. So going back to these different states. So we look at this transition here. Once you click on this arrow, then you have the different settings that you can mess around with. Mainly the transition between your one state and the other. Like you can blend these two to make them look better. For this purposes, we kind of just want the player idle to stop and then immediately walk, right? If you hit this little settings, I think it's like, you usually want to hit fixed duration again, just to make sure that it's for sure going to stop at that point. But in order for this to happen, we need a condition. In order to set a condition, over here on the left, you have to create a parameter. So to create one, you just hit the plus button, you name it, and then, so we name this speed, right? And then if you go back into this transition setting at the bottom, it has conditions. So you see you have your speed, and it'd be greater or less than a value. So we make this value very small because the second that speed is getting bigger, that's when we want the animation to go. And then we'll change those values in the code. Same thing the other way around. Once we stopped walking and we don't want the animation to play anymore, we have to create a transition to the player idle state. So it's essentially the same thing, except the condition is that the speed is less than 0.01.
Oh. No.
Yes. You can, but for walking, especially when you have a speed associated with your player, it's probably better to use a number because it's going to be on a range, right? I guess you could say anytime he's walking from that frame. But I think it's just better to use a number. I guess if you can get it to work, then that's fine too. So like I said, you can have multiple animations on one object. These are kind of bad examples of it because these are all one. But say you had a body animation and a head animation that you had separately. First, you create an empty game object and essentially child those two those two sprites to that game object. And it's pretty much the same process. Okay, so after we get these animations going for our player, we can create a player controller, which you've done before. Go to scripts, player controller, and open up Visual Studio. There's a lot in here already, but I'll run through what we're doing. So if you remember from previous lectures, we had the get input based on AWSD or something like that. Another way to do that, here's your update. You can get input that get access horizontal and get access vertical. So this is calling the settings in your project by going through the input manager. We have these headings horizontal and vertical, and then we also have negative button and then alternative AD. So by calling horizontal and vertical within your code, you're essentially saying whenever those buttons are pressed under those names, grab that input. And it is essentially the same process that we have here, right? Position X plus speed times horizontal times delta time. Okay. Yeah, I feel like you guys have a good grasp of that. It seems like everyone already has that in their game. So obviously when you hit run, you can use the arrows up, down, left, right, or you can use AWSD to move your character. So let's talk about this background for a second. Again, I was just messing around for this tutorial, but in order to make this background, we need to make a tile map. How do we make a tile map? Right click, 2D objects, tile map. And this will automatically make a game object called grid, and then below it has a tile map. Then believe. Okay, so then this is the tile map that you would be using for your game. This is essentially this grid here. Being that I already have one, I could just remove this. Again, we're using this one. An easy way to create these levels is by using a palette. So you can go to Window, 2D, Tile Palette. And then this window pops up. And with this, what you can do is grab whatever tile map that you have for, or tile set that you have for your background, essentially drag it on there, and then should go ahead and throw them on there. Yep. So now you have your tile set in here, and what this allows you to do is essentially paint on your scene. So if you want to get this, grab your paintbrush, and then you can just drag it along. It makes it really easy to make large changes to your area just by clicking on whatever object that you want. So But this becomes really useful, especially when you have a lot of objects that you need to throw into your game, or a lot of tiles that you need to put into your game. One thing to note is that sometimes you can like kind of click around here and this edit ends up having a star on it. It essentially means that things are changing within your tile maps, and you may not want to do that. Just make sure that this star isn't there just by clicking it, and you're not changing anything anymore. It can just be annoying because you don't really want anything to change in your palette. You want to change things in your scene. Okay. So let's create another tree here. If I can find it. Rain. Again, I don't really know what's in these packets. I just, here we go, boxes. Let's throw a box in there. Okay, I didn't throw a box in there. One thing to note, notice that, oh, I'm sorry. You can actually see it, it just needs to be scaled up. But sometimes what can happen is that this object can go past your camera when you throw it in there sometimes. I don't know, I had this happen to me. Maybe it's just not happening now. But say this thing is like out of the scope somehow. Maybe it's like over here or something. Yeah, I don't know. I had an instance where an object that I was putting into this scene wasn't being shown up either in the game or in the scene, vice versa. What I was running into is that the item was like all the way back here where the camera was here. Once they pulled it back, it was showing up again. So it's just something to think about when we're trying to troubleshoot issues. So let's scale this up to. So, just like in the 3D games that we were working on, if we go towards this box, we kind of just go straight through it. It's flat, doesn't really do anything. What we need to do is add a bit of physics to it. So, add a rigid two-body. Someone's mic is on. I don't know if they want it to be on or not. Just double check. So yeah, add a rigid two-body, 2D rather. Again, this is different than the regular rigid body because these are specifically made for 2D sprites. Because let me see here. Well, first we have the gravity scale to 0 because then you don't want gravity messing around with this thing. We also want to freeze rotation.
Or it falls back in there.
Of course, now it's not working. Yeah, I think that's the issue. Is the collider. Collider 2D. Yeah. I'm not sure what's going on with this guy. Maybe I need to create it as a sprite rather than just throwing it in there.
I'll see you smoking.
Give me 1 second, guys. And I'm back. Okay, so let's try first with the two body, because I thought that you could just get away with one of these guys. You probably do need a collider. Yeah, that's what I was talking about. So you see it in here, and then you run it, and then it disappears. It's all the way back here. So you got to bring it on back. Let's give it a collider. Trigger. There you go. That's acting like a box, but if you notice, it's kind of throwing some physics at it. That's here. Also, we're not really touching it, so we can fix these by looking in the rigid body 2D here to freeze the rotation on the z-axis for this object. What that'll allow you to do is move this thing without it rotating on you. Okay. And then we can also fix the gap here. This this box here is the collider for this object. So we need to bring this in. There's multiple ways you can do this. You can either edit it manually by bringing it in this way, or you can also scale it like that with the X and Y coordinates, depending on how precise you need to be. There you go. Now you can see it's a bit more accurate. I've already done this to the player object. As you can see, I put it just on the body because we want to be able, because if this collider was as big as the player, then it'd be hitting on his head, which doesn't look very realistic. So you just bring it on down. Okay. One thing you'll notice is that once you have these tiles set up, how can I grab them? I believe that there is a setting here that I'm not seeing. Sorry, guys. Oh, that's fine. You're going to need to add a tile map collider 2D component to your tiles. For some reason, I can't change anything. Let me just try it with a new one. Element 2D collider. Select ones. Should be able to select them unless I'm going crazy here. Oh, yeah, I think. Yeah. So you have to actually go to your tile set and all the different objects that you don't want a collider on. Like say these green ones here. So it's probably easier to expand this out so you actually see what the tiles look like. So all of these darker green ones, if you highlight them, you have a collider type. So this one, I believe, we don't want collider on these tiles, but we want ones on the outer ones. These should have. Yes, yeah, these should all have them on. That has it on. Just give that a shot, make sure I didn't mess anything up. Yeah, so you see that we're able to move around on these tiles, but once I get to the outer ones, that's where I'm stuck. And I'm able to even get this far because the collider for my player is on my body, not on my head. So this is good to do, especially like setting up these like large areas like this to save on computation time. You know, if all these different items have colliders on it, then it's looking and having to figure out what am I hitting and what am I not. So I'm gonna pause for about 10 minutes here, and we'll get into some other stuff here. All right, just be back in a bit. All right, everyone. I know that wasn't 10 minutes, but just kind of wanted to get some more water and take a break. Is there any questions about anything so far? About tile maps or the palette, tile palette, or animations or anything? Okay, so I'm going to go over collectibles here. So I have this apple, and what I want the apple to do is that when my player goes over to the apple, I get health, and then it gets destroyed. Right. So the first thing you have to do is give your player health, right? So let's go back into our player controller and see how health is being handled. Up at the top, we have a serialized field of current health, which will show us the current health that our player has. Next, we have a field called max health, which is equal to 5. So essentially, we're saying maximum health this player can have is 5. And then we have this reference of health. This will probably come in later, I believe. But essentially, we're grabbing the current health for this player. Okay, so I have this function called change health. And essentially, it changes the current health to an amount given. But yeah, between it uses a built-in function called mathf.clamp, which essentially grabs a value between the given minimum and maximum numbers. Alrighty. And then, so we pretty much have everything that we need to give this player health, right? If we look at the player controller scripts, we can set the speed, there's our current health, and there's our max health. One thing you also have to do in the update is set your health, which I believe I did. I'm sorry, I had to start. Yeah, current health equals max health. So we set that right from when we start the game. Okay, and then obviously when we run it, you notice that the current health is set to 5, which is the max health. All right, so then we have to create a script for grabbing the apple, right? So we have this health collectible script here. Let's take a look at that. In this script, we're using an on-trigger enter 2D event. Again, it's one of the built-in events that happens whenever a trigger event is hit on an object, right? So first, we're going to grab the player controller object, and then is there a player controller? If there is the player's health, which is that reference that we grab, which is our current health, less than our max health. So essentially, can we take any more health than we already have? If that's true, then controller change health. We are calling that function that we created in our player controller, and we're increasing it by 1. And once we do that, we're destroying the current game object. We're destroying the apple. So we have our apple, which also has the same type of idle animation on it. Nothing too special about it, but it also has a box collider, but we have to check is trigger, because that's what's going to tell it that there's a trigger event happening when we get close to it. And then we throw on the health collectible script. All right, so we run it. Move over to it. Oh, nothing happens. Nothing happens because our player is currently at 5 health. So if we set that to 3, by running over it, boop, you notice that it's removed from our scene, and then our current health is increased by 1. So again, just like in 3D, that's the difference between the trigger and the collider, is that a collider is pretty much for physical items that you need to move around, and a trigger is something that an event needs to happen. And just like with this block or anything else, the I believe, actually, let me test that out because I'm not entirely 100% on that. I think it's through the collider. Yeah, it's only through the collider box are you actually grabbing that item. Because if you hit it with your head, don't do anything. Hit it with your body. Oh, you know what? Maybe it is on the. Well, I think I just ran into it, but you get the idea. Yeah, it's only the body that it's looking for. One thing I'm going to go back to real quick is this tree. I'm going to create a new tree. And if you notice, it's underneath all of this stuff. It's it can kind of get confusing as to what gets placed up top and what doesn't. And then collision is also pretty confusing at that. Let's see, maybe it's in the other one. Yeah, okay. Nope. Prop 9. So 2D object, sprite, name, true 2. So one way to handle these, like you have these many things around, is using the order in layer to set it initially. It's probably better to do it programmatically, to essentially say whenever there is, I believe it is a trigger, or I'm sorry, it's probably a collision, I would imagine, that whenever you hit this object, you go behind it over here and in front of it, right? That's what we want. We want to be able to go in front of this object and also behind it. Well, how do we do that if this entire thing has a bounding box around it? Keep doing that, I think. Right? And then make sure the setting's correct. Oh, interesting. I wonder why it moved. Oh, probably because these bounding, it's not happy with these bounding boxes. So I'm going to set this layer to 1. It's not liking it. So yeah. So now it's there, but it's still just on top of everything. I believe we can just get the trunk of this. There's different ways to manipulate the layers and the collider boxes when it comes to different objects, and I think it all depends on what you're trying to do with it. It doesn't care about it anymore. Just try removing the trigger. Okay, well, now you can move around. That's staying in place. We can go behind it. So you would have to program a way to say, once you are colliding with this box, change the player's layer to be above whatever you're hitting. And then once you get out of it, change the layer back. But anyway, it's just something to keep in mind. I didn't want to go into all of that right now because it's kind of a pain. Another thing that you can add to something like this, a polygon collider 2D. And you notice that it has like all these different collider panels associated with this, because it essentially tries to optimize the best way to make it. So, and again, you can edit this to be better here. You can also change the sprite. Leave. But there are different ways to handle collider boxes. Is kind of my point with all of this. Alrighty, so I have this enemy here. Same type of deal. He has the animations and everything. Let's take a look at his script, which is the enemy controller. So pretty much, I mean, there's a lot of different things going on here. I believe this, it's been a while since I wrote this. I believe this timer changes the direction of the character, but I don't think it's added into here. I'm not sure about this piece. I'd have to take a look and see what's going on. But essentially, it's the same same type of thing that you were doing for our player controller, except it's kind of automated, right? Like we have this position Y, and we're adding delta time, and we're adding this multiplying the speed, and he's moving that way. We have it set on a Boolean vertical, which is essentially a checkbox that we can turn on and off, and then we move. The position is moved based on these parameters. We also have a function here for on collision enter 2D. And what we do here is we grab the player controller, or the player. If it's valid, change the health to -1. So essentially, we're just removing 1 health when we collide with it. So we go back in here. Back to our player, so we see our variables. Yeah, player controller. If I move towards them, you'll see that my current health has been moved to 4. Move on to 3, 2, 1. Okay, so that's kind of how you deal with enemies in 2D games. So I believe, yeah. Let me check my player controller. I had. Okay, Helga, no problem. But I also had this, which is adding like an invulnerable or invincible timer once you had a collision event. So just to run through it really quick. Sorry, just give me 1 second. Okay, sorry about that. So yes, we have some variables here. Public flip time invincible, which we're giving value of 2. A Boolean is invincible, and then the float timer. And then we have this function as IE numerator invul wait. So essentially, we're going to be waiting for a period of seconds of time invincible. And then invincible is false after this time. Okay. And then on the collision enter, if the other tag is an enemy, we talked about tags before, where you can set different game objects to a tag. Is invincible is true. And then you can start your coroutine of invul wait, which is this here. So I believe in order to get this to work with here, we just need to add, first in the player controller, I believe, let's make sure. Public pool is turn is invincible. So now we should be able to grab that from here, which is our so if the controller or if the player is not invincible, then take damage. So let's see, you put timed events in a regular function. I believe yes, you probably have to put that in a coroutine, just because you're pausing things from happening. So let's see here. Player stuff. I have to dig into why that's not going on, but that is essentially the general idea of using a timer in that way. You can put it in a regular function. I think it's just better to put it in a coroutine, just because it's dealing with certain processes. It's essentially saying, hey, we need to yield everything else while this timer just goes. It's good practice to do that. Any other questions about the 2D setup or anything? So I'm actually, I'm going to stop it here for tonight, because I feel like, it's kind of a lot to go over, especially with the animations and stuff. But again, I'll be here until 8 o'clock if you guys want to have a private chat with me, if there's something you want me to go over, anything like that. I'm going to go through the roll one more time just to make sure I got everybody that was here. Yeah, I didn't see Lloyd today. Didn't see Antoine either. Okay. Yep. Like I said, that's it. Yeah, please let me know if you have any questions or anything like that. You guys have a good night. Happy Halloween for those celebrating. Have a safe Halloween. And I will see you here next week.